The time is at hand.
From the land of crackheads and honey, on the south side of Williamson, West Virginia, you're listening to In Dark Places. Hope you enjoyed the Northern Lights. Did you get to see that? I saw that. They were great. A lot better than it was about a year ago. I don't know, that junk's not normal though, because we're not supposed to see that in West Virginia. Something's up. Can you hear that? It's like something weird. I'm getting a weird transmission.
This is Mr. Haunted with this week's Cryptid Corner. I've been neglecting Junebug and In Dark Places listeners for too long. I've been busy, but it's no excuse. So I have this a little different way of doing a Cryptid Corner this week. Instead of talking about a cryptid, I came across this little poll on the internet. Someone asked, what's your cryptozoological paranormal pet peeve? And these are some of the answers. Mine is the whole, LOL, did a child draw this? When a witness draws what they saw, not everyone is artistically talented. Calm down. Also, the ah ha ha ha, what were they drinking or smoking? Just stop. This is why witnesses don't talk about things. Another answer. Mine is the whole, they only took one pic thing. Or, the Patterson-Gimlin was hoaxed. The guy admitted it on his deathbed. Automatically assuming every cryptid has to be a prehistoric animal. Or, it's a guy in a suit with no evidence to back up the claim, but somehow that the explanation they stick to. Another guy says, everything is a skinwalker. No research, no context, no geography, no knowledge in local legends, folklore, etc. It is a legitimate umbrella term. And the old, we've never ever found a body, when talking about Bigfoot or whether it exists, my answer is, how many coyote bodies have you seen in the wild? Or a fox or a wolf or large cats? If Bigfoot is somewhat intelligent, it can be evading humans on purpose. Another pet peeve of someone is, would you use a potato instead of a camera? This is the best one. It's too blurry, it must be fake. Or, it's too clear, it must be fake. You can't win either way. And here's the last one. Someone said, you draw an elephant or a lion from memory and then see what it comes out like. Because I'm not artistic. It's going to look like a kid's drawing. So there you have it. And there's this week's Cryptid Corner.
Hey, thank you, Jimmy Haunted, roving reporter, Cryptid Corner. I agree with every bit of that stuff, especially like the one with the cameras, because like you can't win on that. They're either going to say that it's faked because it's too good, or that it's like too blurry. You just can't win. People are dumb. I don't know if I'm just getting to be a grumpy old man or what, but I just really can't take people these days. Thank you, Jimmy. That was fun. This week on the show, we have glitches in the Matrix. I like the glitch stories. Years ago, there was a school shooting at my school. You may have heard of it. I was out of the building at the time for lunch with friends. A couple of very strange things about this experience. Number one, when we realized we couldn't return to school, we went to my house and called our families. The traffic was so bad that everyone stayed with me, watching the news until late that evening. 2 days later, a special edition of Newsweek magazine hit the racks. The cover photo shows 3 girls walking and crying just off school grounds where families were meeting with their kids during the shooting. The strange thing was that 2 of those girls were at lunch with me and were at my house for the rest of the day. There would not have been any opportunity to take that picture of them. I never understood where that picture of them came from. Number 2, I remember feeling like I couldn't relate to my friends and classmates that were in the school when it happened. I know it's messed up, but I felt like I missed out on something life-changing and that I was still the same. One night, I remember thinking how I wish I could have been there. That night, I had one of the most vivid dreams I've ever had, which I can only explain as a third-person view of the entire event, over the shoulder of the shooters. Since then, I've realized how fortunate I was to not be in the building. This happened about 12 years ago, and I almost had to get a roommate exchanged because it frightened me so badly. Normal Saturday morning, I'm laying in bed, surfing the internet, just generally being lazy. It's about 11:30 or so, and my roommate jumps up from his bed, slips on his hoodie, grabs his keys, and tells me he's going to go grab some breakfast from the cafeteria. I see him step outside and close the door. A few seconds after, settle back into my browsing. A few minutes pass, and I hear the bathroom door in our dorm click open, and out pads my roommate wearing a towel, looking fresh out of the shower. I was dumbfounded, probably pale as a ghost, because he asked me if I was feeling okay. I shook it off, maybe thinking I had gotten so engrossed in my browsing that I'd lost track of time and just hadn't noticed him coming back. I do that all the time, like whenever I'm scrolling on Facebook for some dumb reason. I just keep scrolling. I don't know what I'm looking for, but I'll just scroll and scroll. I'll look up and hours have passed. I do that on YouTube a lot too, but that's not why you called. He pads back into the room for some reason, and I look at the clock on my computer. It's only 11:45. I still shake it off, thinking that I had just imagined him leaving to get food. But then, after a couple minutes, I hear the signature sound of a key opening our dorm door. And there's my roommate, in the same hoodie he put on when he left, hair dry, with a to-go box full of food from the cafeteria. It was about 11:50. I jolted up, ran to the bathroom to check if he was in there. Nothing. The shower wasn't wet. There was no fog in the bathroom. I had to leave for the rest of the day. I was so unsettled. I became so uncomfortable around him. I almost broke down and had to switch roommates. I'm still uneasy around him, and I still can't explain what happened. It's pretty much the only uncontrolled intrusion into my waking life I've ever experienced. I was playing in a UIL region band, whatever that is, in high school, having competed and won a place in the band. I played Euphorium, was second chair, was kicking myself for not getting first. C'est la vie. They got a well-known band composer to direct us. His name was Band Director. Unique name. And much like a professor will assign all the books he wrote inside his own classroom, Director assigned all of his pieces, save maybe one. You can imagine how painstakingly we went over each song. They were his children. One song really stuck with me in particular. It is called Dusk. The melodies were simple, but the harmonies are some of the most powerful I've ever heard. Slowly it started to piece together as we practiced it. The day before the concert, we were finishing up the song, adding different stylistic notes here and there. After that was finished, he wanted us to play it through a couple times. I became lost in the music, even as I was playing along. It was simply powerful, and the next thing I knew, I was no longer in the band hall. I was in a barn with my bare feet on the dirt floors. Every sense told me the barn was real, even more real than the band hall, where I really was, because I was taking in all five senses at once. The air was cool, almost chilly. Everything felt lighter and cooler than it had before. I could feel my heart beating, not panicked or rapid, but strong. I reached out a hand for the door in the side of the barn, not the large ones, but the normal ones on the opposite sides. The walls were old wood with cracks that allowed some reddish sunlight in. I opened the door, and the first thing I noticed was a woman with long blonde hair sitting on the ground outside, facing away toward the sunset, which was straight ahead of me. I knew her. My gaze turned up toward the sunset where she was looking. The sun was already past the edge of the world, so there was only red soaking the sky. But the most incredible thing to me was the wind. It cascaded incredibly powerfully through the wheat, which was stretched out as far as I could see, endless stalks just waving back and forth. It came, and it's hard to describe this. The wind wrapped around me. It was cold and yet so good to be in. It brought a sharp life, like taking a deep breath after you've been underwater for as long as you can. I can't remember if I stayed out there watching the view for minutes, or I came back within seconds. Still, there's almost no words to describe this. I've tried my best to do so. The whole experience happened within a few bars of the song. I believe I even continued playing while experiencing this for a bar or two. All I know is there is a heaven. I wouldn't be one bit disappointed if that was it. A few questions remain. I've never explained anything like this before or since, at least during my waking hours. I have had stranger instances, also when I'm sleeping, although many things could be explained away. I completely understand that this could just be my imagination, but that's still saying something, isn't it? Isn't it amazing where your mind can take you if you just give it a chance? Unless we're careful to experience things, we may just see more worlds in our sleep and waking dreams than we ever do in real life. I had a dream about seeing my aunt. Okay, now right now, this sets off a red flag. I don't know about dreams. Or dreams glitches. I had a dream about seeing my aunt who shot herself. We sat at a booth in some restaurant and talked about her death and how it hurt, and I cried until I woke up. It was vivid, and I remembered it after I woke up. I flew to visit my dad across the country a few days later, and on the car ride from the airport, I told my dad about my dream. He sat there for a few minutes and then told me that he and his mother had the same dream on the same night. It blew my mind. Okay, we'll have to go to the judges on that one. I guess it's kind of glitchy, right? A little background. My grandmother is very superstitious, but also very brilliant. One of the things that she is superstitious about is that she is very afraid of owls. She thinks owls bring death, and that when you hear an owl hooting, somebody nearby is dying. I was a late teenager when my grandfather got sick. We all knew he was on his way out, and that it was just a matter of time. One night, while I was out with my buddies, we were driving around and came across an owl in the middle of the road, just standing there. The owl was facing our car, and we had the headlights shining right on it. We couldn't see the owl's face because I guess it had its head twisted away from the bright headlights. This wasn't too weird because owls can turn their heads like almost 360 degrees. I got out of the car to see if the bird was injured or even dead. I walked right up to it, expecting it to fly away at any second, but it didn't budge. I got close enough to actually touch the owl. It was warm, so I know that it was alive, but it didn't move even when I touched it. This is where it gets weird. I started walking around the owl and made a complete circle, looking at the bird from all sides, and I never saw its face. One of my other friends also walked around the owl and reported the same thing. No face, just feathers all the way around. We left the owl in the middle of the road and drove on. At the time, we thought that it was just a little creepy, but, maybe an illusion or something. When I got home, I found out from my parents that my grandfather had died. Now, I'm a complete materialist. I don't believe in any sort of magic or supernatural occurrences. I am 100% positive that the appearance of an owl on that night at roughly the same time as my grandfather died was a coincidence, and the whole no-face thing was probably an illusion. Maybe the owl had his face buried in his chest feathers or something. Still, it is pretty creepy. There's another one about a passing grandfather. About a month after my grandfather passed away, sometime in April, my husband and I moved to a house that was built in 1930. It was previously owned by an elderly man who, in his prime, loved his yard and took care of the landscaping. My grandfather, in his prime, as well, was an award-winning master gardener and had award-winning roses of all types. He had taught me a few things here and there, and because of him, I enjoy working in the yard and making it beautiful. When my husband and I moved into this house, the flowers, grass, bushes, and roses were all in terrible shape. In front of the walkway leading to the front door connecting the sidewalk was a trellis with climbing roses covering it. It had potential to be beautiful, but not being taken care of in years, I didn't think it would have a chance to look beautiful again. I was determined to fix it. I read books, looked online, etc. Finally, one night I had a dream. My grandfather, and now see, here we go. A dream. Are dreams glitches? I don't know. My grandfather was at my new house, taking me to each type of flower and bush and tell me exactly how to bring the garden back to life. Where to clip, where to add plant foods, everything. Then, we got to the roses on the trellis. He showed me exactly what to do to make it grow. Make the roses climb higher, and where to tie the stems to train the vines to grow how I want it. The most important instruction he gave me, and told me over and over, was to wait until it had rained for 2 days straight. The next morning, I woke up happy because I felt like I had just spent the whole day with my grandfather, who I missed so much. 2 days after a straight rain, I did everything word for word he had told me, and my yard was beautiful. People would tell me they purposely walked by because my yard was so nice to look at. Thanks to my grandfather, he helped a sad yard look beautiful again, and taught me more about plants and flowers than I ever expected to know. I was 15 and had a dream my friends and I skipped school to go to a concert in Wendover. I had, at the time, been down that road a million times. In the dream, I was driving my friends, one 14 and one 15. At the time of the dream, were playing the road trip game, and we'd passed by a large collection of trees. 14 had just asked, "How many times can you fold a piece of paper?" when a semi driving in the opposite lane lost control and hit us head on. I was the only one to survive the crash. Fast forward 2 years. Me and my friends decided to go to a concert for my friend's birthday. I'm driving. We're passing, coming up on a bunch of trees, and my friend, 14, begins to ask the question, "How many times can you fold a piece of paper?" We're just past the trees. My dream comes back full force, and I jerked the car to the side of the road. We nearly tipped over. My friends were screaming at me and asking what was wrong. The semi from my dream lost control and screeched past us, straight into the trees. If I hadn't pulled over, it would have hit us. There was also a time I knew I was going to get shot, and still got shot. When in college, I sometimes stayed up late visiting friends on campus. I lived roughly 10 minutes away by car. Before I sat at home, I would note the time of my departure. This one time I left at 2:45. I was driving down the road and an extremely heavy fog set in, visibility of maybe 10 meters. I drove very slowly. I thought I would be home by around 3:05 or so, maybe a little later. I actually do not remember the trip at all, beyond driving very slowly. However, when pulling into the driveway, I noticed that it was 2:46. Stranger yet, my odometer was the same as it was when I set out. I called my friend, who informed me that I had just walked out the door less than a minute ago. I lost signal. That by itself wasn't surprising, because my place had crap reception. Yeah, kind of like here in West Virginia. I feel your pain. But the next day, he had no recollection of my visit. This guy doesn't mess around with things like that either. Edit. Oh, and he had no record of my call on his phone, though I had a record of an outgoing call. I did 7 miles in heavy fog in about 1 minute, and less than a mile. When I spoke to my point of reference, he thought I was joking. Cut off, then could not even recall my visit. I personally never believed in these types of things until I had my experience. When I was 16, I went out riding quads with my brothers and father in Barstow, California. This trip ended in disaster when my father and another rider collided head-on in a wash. It's a small creek in a desert, killing my dad instantly. Over the next 3 to 4 days, I would cry myself to sleep at night. One of those nights, I can't remember which, I had a dream where I walked out of my room, and standing there was my father with his face covered in bruises and some blood, with a confused look. I was speechless and frozen. When he looked at me and asked, "Where is everyone?" I instantly broke into tears and woke myself up, sobbing. I ran downstairs to tell someone and only found my mom and brothers in the house. Everyone else had gone home. Crazy fact number 1. I couldn't have known what his face looked like because I was too scared and sad to look at it when we saw his body in the hospital after they declared him dead. And number 2, we had a bunch of family staying and visiting us constantly for a few days, and that morning, before I even woke up, they all returned home. So I couldn't have known they were gone before the dream. I woke up early every weekday at 5 a.m. to get ready for work at 6:30 a.m. The morning is still dark as the sun has not risen. By 5:50, I am all dressed up and ready to head out. Before I do, I try to grab a little breakfast for myself and warm up my car. So I do that. I put 2 cinnamon waffles in my toaster and I put my shoes on, run out to start my car. I start my car, which is a push-to-start car. Oh man, I hate those. And decide, while I'm at it, to scrape the back window of my car, since I know my defrosters won't work that fast. After about 2 to 3 minutes of scraping, I run to the door and I find that it's locked. Not only that, the kitchen light is also off. Thinking my mom or my brothers must have locked the door and turned the lights off. Luckily, having a push-to-start car, I still had my keys on me. I got in, checked the toaster. This is the part that puzzles me. Not only did I get locked out, but my waffles were gone. I knew that I was going to be late if I tried to heat up another, so I decided to just buy breakfast at work. I grabbed my stuff and headed out. As I was walking to my car, which was a good 10 steps away from the house, I could tell my car wasn't on. My heart dropped, as I thought my car just broke down. I decided to try and start it, praying that it wouldn't just leave me stranded. It started. I was so happy. I put the car in reverse. I turned my back, and what I saw next hit me like a ton of bricks. The back window wasn't scraped. I thought about it. My car wasn't warm. The toaster wasn't warm either when I went back in to check on my waffles. I had a dream where a little girl came and jumped on my bed and started talking to me in French. She kept saying a phrase that sounded like "faire are" over and over again. It was "faire are" something. I woke up to find that "faire VR" means to have a dream. I do not speak a word of French. I had a nightmare where an Asian woman was being tortured on a bed. She kept screaming, "Meta, meta." No indications of her nationality were in the dream. During the dream, I thought she was yelling someone's name. Upon waking up, I find that she was a person from Thailand screaming, "Mercy." I don't speak Thai. When I wake up, I use the Google language tools to figure out what they were saying to me. When I was 11 and started high school in the UK, Okay, it's kind of different. I had more freedom than before and used to walk the 2 miles to and from school. One day I was coming home alone, and I think I must have delayed as there weren't any other kids about as I remember. I glanced down a side street. This is the UK, and there are some often long streets of terraced Victorian houses, with shorter streets of similar houses branching off them. Anyway, I saw at the bottom of one of these shorter streets a second-hand or junk shop. It had a lot of stuff outside of it, on pavement and hanging up. It was odd to see a shop in a residential street, and I love that type of shop. So I walked down the street to look. I remember a pair of white skates hanging outside and a lot of chairs and junk like vases and pots, etc. I saw the woman inside the shop and smiled. Had a poke about and thought I'd go back when I had the cash. Next day I looked down the street and there was no shop. I used to go back all the time trying to find it again. I could still see it in my mind's eye and have even Googled to see if there was a shop there once. Come up with a blank. I see the woman's face, the skates, everything, but I can't work out what happened that day. Maybe just a glitch in Verizon, but weird nonetheless. I missed a phone call from my mom. She left a voicemail, but when I checked it, it was from some girl saying she was in Somerset, a nearby town, and would be home in about 20 minutes and to stop freaking out. It seemed like it was intended to be left for a parent. I called my mom to see if she actually had tried to call, and she said she had, but she was answered by some other mother, freaking out saying, "Where are you? You were only in Somerset. What is taking you so long to get back?" Yeah, kind of weird. Maybe a phone glitch. I don't know. Never heard of that. I lived in a rental apartment when I was in college. Me and 6 of my friends split the rent as it was cheaper that way. There was this one time during the holidays when 5 of my roommates all went back to their respective hometowns, and there was only me and my other friend left. That night I was on the computer in my room, and my friend was watching TV in the living room. I heard a knock on the door. I called out to my friend in the living room, "Bro, there's someone at the door. Get it." He didn't answer. Instead, I got a text from him saying, "Hey man, open the door. I'm outside." I was confused, so I went to the living room and saw him just sitting there watching TV. But there's still someone banging on the door at that moment. At the time, I thought he was lazy to get off his butt and open the door, and tricked me to get it. But when I opened the door, guess what? There he is, all packed up with his bags, wearing different clothes, and looked like he had just got back. I was like, WTF. I went back to the living room and found nobody there. Then I had major goosebumps and a chill down my spine. It was the scariest, most creepiest, and longest 5 seconds of my life as I was making sense of what's happening. I told my friends, and they all said they had somewhat similar experiences in that apartment. Needless to say, we all moved out the next semester. So I had this dream about 2012, about a year after I had met a friend online. She told me about her boyfriend being gone to training to get a promotion in the NYPD. And before that, he had been a U.S. Marine. Being from Canada, that alone was pretty cool. Trace and I bonded over trivial women's issues, and every once in a while I would talk to Chris when he would text me through her phone. We mainly just talked about policies and the effects of it on family life. Anyway, I have this weird, vivid dream that I'm in some dry, hot area. There's sand, but trees as well. I can see mountains in the distance. I turn, and a guy is screaming Chris's last name over and over. When I look at this guy, a shot rings out and decapitates the guy. There's literally nothing left from the jaw up. The dream changes, and suddenly I'm in bed with a beautiful woman. I look over at her face and realize it's Chris's girlfriend. I looked down at her thighs and counted 5 freckles on her right inner thigh and 7 on her left. I woke up and immediately texted Chris, giving him every last detail. He texted me back, freaked out, demanding to know how I got such intimate details. But the thing is, he hadn't even told anyone about the Marine being decapitated because he didn't want to freak anyone out. And no one else but the two of them knew about the freckles. During college, I used to travel a lot on weekends between my hometown and college, 90 miles away. One weekend, an acquaintance of mine from high school also decided to drive home in a separate car. One Saturday night, I had a very vivid dream where this infant girl came up to me and said, "Please take care of my sister," and showed me an image of a car crash on the highway consisting of a silver Colorado, a friend's car, and a black Ford Explorer. The next morning I immediately called her and told her about that dream and asked her if she had a sister because I've only ever met her brothers. Her response was that, well, my mom had a stillborn girl, and then I asked how old she would have been today. She said 5. It immediately clicked that the infant from my dream was her lost sister. I talked her into driving back with me the next night and watched the news, only to see an identical image of what I saw in my dream, only this time it was only a black Ford Explorer and not 2 cars. Still freaks me out to this day. My grandmother's maiden name is my middle name. She had it engraved in a brick in her house, a decorative brick, not like an actual piece of her house. She sat it on top of one of her hutches with all her fine decorations and whatnot. 10 years she had this brick. One day in a separate part of town, my church group was doing a service project at a rundown house that was purchased by the city for a public park. We're cleaning this house, exterior, and raking and cutting English ivy and whatnot. Well, a few of my friends go off to the driveway / main area and are exploring the woods, and they find a shack. I thought it might be a tool shed, but it was quite a ways from the main house. Anywho, we pop inside. It's creepy, but abandoned, of course. There's a cot, a paint can, some empty soup cans, and a few other random things. I think a hairbrush. There was a small wood shelving by the cot, tall but narrow. Bottom shelf, under a dirty rag. Brick, identical to my grandmother's. My buddy is like, "Thebum, isn't that your middle name?" And I replied with affirmative. And everyone else called BS. So I whipped out my wallet and showed them my ID. I picked up the brick and brought it home to my mom, and my eyes got as wide as hers got. We kept it. Took it to my grandma's. She still has hers. Now she has 2. I don't know where the heck that thing came from. I've never seen anyone else with those bricks. I don't know where she got her first one, and her maiden / my middle name is obscure. One night I had a dream where I was thrift shopping, and somehow I was able to pick out a new Ford Mustang for $200. It was a weird, albeit awesome dream. It even had a specific color scheme, white with 2 blue stripes down the middle, which wasn't my forte, but hey, I got it for $200. The next day, I skidded out into a ditch. It had just snowed, and a Mustang with the exact same color scheme pulled over to see if I was alright. It must have been a coincidence, but it sure was weird. And just in case you didn't know, there are no coincidences. Didn't happen to me, but to one of my friends. While we were in high school, we got to be pretty good friends with an exchange student from Uzbekistan. Never heard of it. We used to hang out all the time doing the usual high school girl thing. Lots of anime movies, boy talk, and the like. Well, the day she was supposed to leave, my friend hung out with her all day at her house where they watched Advent Children because our exchange friend hadn't seen it yet. Well, later that night, maybe around 12ish, I get a very, very long-distance call from our exchange friend who wanted to assure us that she had gotten home okay. She had apparently flown out the night before and not even been in the country while she was supposed to have been with my friend watching the anime movie. Her host family corroborates her story with my friend, her mom, and her sister, and swear she was at their house all day while she was actually on the plane or on a layover somewhere in Europe. I didn't see her that day, so I can't say one way or another, but it was always kind of a weird thing I've thought about. Not really glitchy, just a funny feeling I get sometimes. I was hit by a car while riding my bike to school on the first day of my junior year in high school, and I was 16, almost 22 now. For the most part, I was alright, but I did get taken to the hospital for x-rays of my leg and stitches in a gash I received just under my left eyebrow. I know at some point I was given Vicodin to ease the pain in my leg, and eventually I blacked out. The weird part is, sometimes, I don't know if I'm just imagining it or not, but I get glimpses of an emergency room and I think I can hear people's voices. I'm slightly intrigued and also a little frightened at the idea that one day I might wake up in a hospital bed, 16 again, and having experienced living for the span of 6 years in like a 6-week coma or something. That would be weird. Okay, I've got time for one more. You want one more? It's getting late. I need to take a nap. I'm tired. My grandparents on both sides divorced and remarried back in the day, so I had several grandparents growing up. When I was about 4 or 5 years old, I would hang out with my grandma Judy every day. But as I got older, for whatever reason, my family didn't keep close with her. As terrible and weird as it sounds, I actually forgot about her for years. Fast forward to when I'm like 22, and I think about Grandma Judy completely out of the blue. The very next day, she was put into ICU and passed away shortly thereafter. No discernible sign or spiritual significance I can really pull from the whole thing, but man, it was weird. Yes, it was. And that's about the last weird story we have for this week. Hope you enjoyed those glitches in the Matrix. I love that kind of stuff. If you've got a true scary story and you'd like to be a guest on the show, or you just want us to read your story or whatever, send an email to indarkplacespod@hotmail.com. Thanks as always, Jimmy Haunted. Thanks to all the crew at Nighthawk Radio. We'll see you again next time. Thanks for listening. God bless.